Attention gamers. Today we are talking about Dantes, aka the guy who sucked face with Selena Gomez on TV, aka the guy whose original username according to Twitch incels was an unlawful promotion of butt sex, aka the headless horseman, the demonetized demon, the quite possibly worst World of Warcraft player I have ever seen, who has recently taken on a challenge near and dear to my cold heart.
I'm gonna be doing an ADC challenge.
Now, as a hard-stuck right-clicker myself who has been assured through therapy on a regular basis that I should hold my head up high because it's always support diff, I've been hate watching this douche canoe blow past my rank, treating his Twitter page like the back room of Bed Bath & Beyond with the amount of freaking soap boxes I'm seeing on there, but the latest one made me curious. This boils down to a tankier vein build that goes against the mouth-breathing meta followers who autopilot on hit items every game, and his reasoning behind it is this.
Play in a way where you don't get one shot, and as long as you don't get one shot, you're able to carry the game for your team.
Now he's been receiving more hate than a young red pill sneako at a feminist convention for this build, yet he's climbing and announcing his victories from that same back room on Twitter. So today I figured I would analyze his sauce in action and then try it myself in my own hard-stuck hell on earth that I'm stuck in. He starts by saying this.
ADC players have a very bad autistic fixation on DPS. This is their problem. They feel like if they're doing less damage per second, that it's bad. But imagine I'm playing this game, right? And I'm against Azir, Shaco, and Zed. The only thing I need to do this game is survive long enough for my Lulu to ult me, and then we win the fight. You see what I mean? But it's like ADC players are gonna sit there, right? And they're gonna be like, oh dude, no, if I'm doing 200 less damage per second on 6 items, but I'm surviving 5 seconds longer, that's bad. Like they don't actually understand the game. And Void them to get free shot. I have 15,000 hours in League of Legends. I can look at League of Legends, I can play a single game on a champion, right? And I can sit there and I can say, I know exactly what this champion needs to 1v9. And I'm intelligent enough that I can look at what their kit provides, and just by these two things, I'm able to say, I know what to build on this champ, right? Like this.
As I get higher rank, my win rates are literally scaling higher and higher and higher. You know what I mean? There's a reason why.
And I'm thinking, yeah, because at your rank you have a Lulu so far up your ass there's constantly more bubbles on you than a bathtub overdosing on soap, and that he just doesn't understand what happens to an account that has 300 games in silver where the Fizz supports roam wild, where you engage because you have a gank incoming only for them to bait you harder than a jizzing dick as you are stuck having to cosplay Gosu for the next 30 seconds, clenching your ass cheeks so hard they cramp just to get an even trade. Where your frontliner pops his ghost to get back to lane faster. Where games are decided not on which team played the better game but rather which team didn't have the person that rage quit. But he did travel through this piss pit low on his journey, so I was here to learn.
I'm literally carrying every single game through mechanics alone.
Dude, why is this guy calling me a fucking homo?
Then in addition to building different, you also play different, like instead of farming bot lane safely and scaling, he opts to go mid and play games of cat and mouse with half the enemy team in between their towers 9 minutes into the game. But who am I to doubt the strategy of someone who is so committed to this game that he names his pets after champions?
You mean?
That said, he does return to his hometown as I observe how he responds to receiving a gank from his jungler. He drapes his nutsack over the chomping bear traps, which judging by his TikTok I'm guessing is a fetish of his or something, before deep-throating that fat Mexican midget's bonbon, contributing a whopping 3 auto attacks to the effort, to which I'm thinking maybe when it comes to ADC the less you actually participate in the game, the better. Side note, he unironically got more last hits when he was AFK. Anyways, he comes back from what I can only assume was him telling his mom about the fat shit he took this morning or something, and immediately decides to make his opening move in this next battle, a series of hungry hippoing every enemy skill shot. But I guess never doubt a gooner when it comes to edging as he re-engages one Bard's Fart Away from Death and wins the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in the film entitled Lulu Cuffed My Ballsack. But jokes aside, watching his VODs, there's no shortage of base takes he was spitting about ADCs.
Scaling runes for ADC are just very fake. Because if you're getting to a point where you're like late game as an ADC, whether you're like 5% more powerful or not doesn't matter.
And you do see he's way more useful than a normal one-item Vayne who would have to be sweating more than a blind lesbian at a fish market just to have any agency at this point in the game. But with infinite phage procs, a bit of HP and ninja tabis, he's not at a risk of getting blown up like the sex doll in his own closet, so he can play like a total dipshit and succeed. Second item, Hexblade, gives him the ult cooldown reduction to look a bad decision in the eyes and tumble deeper into danger while having just enough beef to thrive in the chaos, unlike the Kraken Slayer Vaynes in the stands who would die to a Shaco sneeze. And so I guess the argument is he is surviving mid-game fights long enough to expedite reaching his end-game build. And I can't tell if Emerald is just where the bonobo apes live or if a bit of health gear makes no one bother focusing him, but it lets him be the first high elo ADC to use his flash aggressively as he helps take down the split chlamydia-ridden sperm cell before reuniting with his team to herd dog a bunch of other enemies back towards their fountain. The more I watch the way he plays, the more I want to call him an absolutely boosted dipshit, and to his credit I am thinking a normal ADC would have died 16 times over again, but like a young Riley Reid he says I can do this because I have plan B. Which in this case looks to be get bailed out by his Lulu, and I'm thinking that's just dumb luck, but if we rewind back to loading screen it turns out it's all part of his strategy.
The only thing I need to do this game is survive long enough for my Lulu to ult me, and then we win the fight. You see what I mean? Nice.
And I've also learned not to be the one to call him bad.
Man, you badass ADC. Yo, Yusef, you what's your PGG? Go. Type username and hashtag. Let's go, Yusef. Yusef TR. Fucking Gold 4 Turkey typing this shit.
So I guess at this point, instead of being a glass cannon that has to play front to back and rely on having one of those mythical non-brain dead frontliners, he just goes straight flanky Frankie and straight to the back like a beefcake while putting the ass in assassin tactics. And because the enemy bird Hitler can't just 2-tap him like a normal Vayne, he survives long enough to come out on top, and after hate watching for days, this seemingly sloppy strategy is what's winning him most of his games, and thus I had to try it myself. But the thing is, my gameplay was going to look a bit different. I have literally zero mastery on this tumbling twat, and before the games start I almost always have at least 3 fingers on my wiener, so shit like this happens. Early on I staple their skeleton to the wall, but he knows my weakness is a good hooker, so I get in a bit of a pickle that I will say if I would have had the components of Kraken Slayer instead of ABF sword here, I definitely would have been a fire that midget fighter could put out, but the extra damage early felt nice. It also helped that this Thresh's parents are siblings as well. I finished my first item and decided the hopping bitch wasn't worth the effort, so I would just fight front to back, and with the attack speed procs it did feel nice bullying the slow kid in lane. This left that jizz puddle from Tacoma FD orphaned under tower, so I hit her with a little push back to base bitch combo, and things were feeling nice until I learned that a steel-toed ninja could just crawl out of people's assholes mid-fight, so it wasn't all rainbows and shower sex at this point. But that said, with Ninja Tabi and a few health components I could treat this Triss attacks like an ugly hose DMs and just ignore them while fucking her friend, which I guess I shouldn't brag about because that friend was letting just about anyone tap that ass, and so even though the first game was an easy win, I never reached full enough build, plus my mid laner's performance was being commentated by Barney Stinson.
Legend? Wait for it. Dairy!
Game 2 would be a better test, as you can see my top laner's attempt at a pre-game proxy push. You could just hear that pussy saying something about the bouse as he dies after killing a single fucking minion like a dipshit moron. That said, we were against a Heimerdinger fiddlesticks bot lane, to which I figured the KG's path in Dante's quasi-troll build would cook against, but unfortunately karma is a bitch and mine was a dumb one, so this wasn't gonna be easy. When she wasn't around, the hay bag was kept horny, but the second he hit 6 I was the victim of constant surprise parties. She was constantly playing 12 feet behind me with a bowl of popcorn as I'm Uber eating some degree whole body because I'm sweating my wet dick off to carry this lane, and even though the build was coming along I couldn't think straight when all I could hear was,
An ally has been slain. An ally
At one point this scarecrow went double sucking and out-healed my damage. I was about to pull up my DMs and send Dantes a picture of my asshole with the comment, "This is what I think about your build," but I got distracted from the sounds in my head continuing. It turns out I could survive things like Jarvan III's son inviting me on a play date, but I couldn't seem to keep the color on my screen enabled as it constantly felt like we were getting caught off guard, which may or may not have had to do with the fact that Karma's a bitch and mine was both dumb and had the lowest vision score in the game. So if you remember, this was my front line and this was my support. This wasn't going to save me. But then I remembered a quote from Dantes.
I have a dream.
And so I kept playing with the build, improving my vein mechanics, until I could understand what his dream meant, and I was ready to show the world how far I had come and how itemizing correctly on an ADC is overpowered. With a fully charged tempo that was lethal in the early game, I used it to bench a greedy Kench, and then the right click button on my mouse was like, "Don't stop Rav, don't stop, don't stop." Oh my god, right there, which one got me the double, and two, I bet paints a picture of how much of a stud I am IRL. Anyways, you would think it makes sense for a catfish to be found in river, but something about this one just felt like he was mispositioned. And in case you forgot, what elo, I'm hard stuck and they had a full AP blitzcrank mid. This gave me enough cash to hit a little shopping spree, but their support wanted to know how many licks it took to be a piece of shit, and the answer was 1. And to make matters worse, I put myself in a situation where I had to absolutely embarrass the fuck out of this fat ass L+ ratio Pokimane status. Rather than waiting for 3 on hit items, I learned to play around the passive plus my ult from just 1 item, knowing with the steel-toed Nikes no asshole was gonna count all the way to 4 in my presence. Then if you've ever read the story Jonah and the Whale, there's an alternate ending where it spits him out. He hit a 1-2 somersault 3 no scope on his dumb face in front of a walking Halo 2 needler and lives happily ever after. At one point I had a little bit of a hiccup when the R key on my keyboard got too sticky from the copious amounts of discharge on it from starting this game 7-1. If you were wondering why I was saving my ult for next game, but I do want you to know that while I was dancing like a broke coke addicted stripper, I eventually fixed the problem and Smurf USA'd on these mofos. The build was feeling super nice. As you can see, Volibears would come in thinking they could just Donkey Kong smash me for half my health, only to be wildly surprised to see it barely tickle me. I would so feel bad every time I would see this little gup with his MOBA Fire ADC build that the only humane thing I could think of to do was put the boosted animal out of his misery before Harry Houdini flashing from danger. I was the hero everyone wanted to shake my hand, but when push came to shove they knew they couldn't hang with me. Pretty soon I had my own personal Barney Stinson commentating my gameplay.
Legend? Wait for it.
At one point my little fat chihuahua of a support got crane gamed into a toasted bathtub, and a squishy meta following ADC would have just ran away, but then I thought, what would Dantes do? And that's when I turned and did something dumb as shit, but similar to in his games, the bold big ballsiness ended up working out in my favor. I was fed and at no risk of getting one shot, which was more liberating than sleeping commando, as I didn't rely on any front line or any support and I could just let my balls fall wherever they wanted. I chased down any red health bar knowing that there wasn't a single threat that could stop me. With almost 3k health I could still melt tanks, and so with a bit of practice all my games were starting to look this way, and I hate to say it, but Dantes and his stupid build was actually genius. Genius enough to get me promoted to the highest I'd been all season.
Fucking Gold 4 Turkey typing this shit?
I'm hard stuck. That's what all the haters say. I'm hard stuck, giving all my LP away. I'm hard stuck, same rank, different day. Cuz elo hell's my home and I'm here to stay.